Yo ho ho, so today I'm going to do my Halloween horror novel recommendations. So I've divided these up into categories which I think might be helpful. The first category is something kind of odd for me. It's a YA recommendation, but I read them when I was 11 and I was really into them then, so they might not hold up well. But it's an author called E.E. Richardson. They're not a trilogy, they're standalone. First one is The Devil's Footsteps, then The Intruders, and The Summoning, and I just adored these books when I was little. The atmosphere in them were so creepy that I'd stay up late at night reading them, and then I wouldn't be able to go to sleep because I was just so creeped out by them. And I've never heard anyone talk about this author or these books, and I really would just recommend them if you're into children's books or teen books to check them out, because 11-year-old me thought they were pretty good. Now on to the books that aren't that scary. So my first recommendation is Rosemary's Baby by Ira Levin. I really liked this book. It's about Satanists, but there's nothing really scary in it. It's more of a thriller / suspense novel, and when I was reading it, it really reminded me of the first season of American Horror Story. So if you dig that season of American Horror Story, I'd recommend this because I got a lot of vibes, kind of murder house vibes from this. Next is Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. I really loved this book when I read it. It's just like Anne Rice's writing is just so beautiful. I really couldn't put it down. If you're into vampires, it's an obvious one to pick up. And then the kind of staple book that you see in everyone's recommendations videos is Carrie by Stephen King, because not only was this a binge read for me, but it was my first King book, and I think if you don't know which one of his books to pick up first, because there's just so many, I'd say go for this one. There's nothing super scary about it. Girl with telekinetic powers, so how scary can that be? But her mother is kind of scary. So these are 3 books that I'd recommend to someone who's just starting to get into horror, who might be a bit squeamish and easily freaked out. These are pretty safe bets. Next category is books that actually freaked me out when I read them. The first one is The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty. It didn't help that when I was halfway through reading it at like midnight, a bird flew into my window and gave me a bloody heart attack, but the idea of possession is really, it's one of my favourite themes in horror films and books. The idea of it really freaks me out. The idea of some unknown entity getting into your body and taking control. The fact that it happens to a little girl in this book is also pretty bad, because children are already pretty creepy without the whole demonic possession thing going on, so yeah. Then I'd recommend Ring by Koji Suzuki, another one that just gave me chills when I was reading it. There was 2 scenes in this that literally made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. This is a series. There are 3 books in the series, and there's also a kind of tie-in book called Birthday, and there's also a book called S, which hasn't been translated into English yet. You can read this book as a standalone. You definitely don't have to continue with the series if you don't want to. As the series progresses, it turns more sci-fi, which I don't have anything against. It's a very interesting creative story. The first scene in this is creepy. It's like, why is he clawing at his face? Like, ew. And then this was a kind of weird one for me, because when I was reading it, it didn't creep me out, but it was later on when I was thinking about it that I was like, that's kind of gross. Is Pet Sematary by Stephen King. Yes, another Stephen King book. Are you really that surprised, people? What creeped me out about this was the fact that, okay, so it's about raising people from the dead, but the idea of when someone comes back from the dead, all they can tell you are bad things and do bad things. Like, that's so creepy. Like, that's really creepy. That really rubbed me the wrong way. I was like, ugh, And I like the idea of kind of coming back from the dead and being all fucked up kind of theme anyway. So yeah, I think I enjoyed this book a lot more than I originally thought I did. So if you're looking to be truly creeped out this Halloween, picking one of these books will definitely get the job done, and reading them late at night will also help. So my next category is graphic novels, and the first one is The Crow by James O'Barr. I read this a couple of years ago now, so the details aren't that fresh in my memory, but it's about a chap who comes back from the dead to avenge his death and his fiance's death at the hand of a gang. What's kind of noteworthy about this is that, okay, apart from the infamous movie, the artwork in this is really, it's terrific. The style changes quite a few times throughout the comic. When Eric is thinking back to his relationship with his fiancée, the artwork is very soft and a romantic type of style, but when he's actually kicking ass and killing people, it's really gritty and hard, and there are some panels in this that really gross me out, especially like the self-harm stuff. I was like, ew, but this is definitely a good read if you're into revenge stories, which I am. Then I recommend Witches. Obviously, I just did a review on this. I've talked about it a couple of times now. I won't go into it that much because you're probably sick of hearing about it. It would be really good to read in the week coming up to Halloween, especially if you're into witches, if you really like the Blair Witch Project, stuff that happens out in the woods, those kind of stories. I recommend this. The next one is Arkham Asylum by Grant Morrison. Again, this is one I read a couple of years ago, so it isn't that fresh, but basically something's happened in Arkham Asylum and all the patients have gotten out and are holding the staff hostage, and they say we'll let some people go if you bring us Batman. And so it's basically a story of Batman traveling through Arkham Asylum, and he's running into all the various criminals in there. The artwork is so gritty. I really like the style of artwork. It's one of the must-read Batman stories if you haven't really read much Batman. And my last graphic novel recommendation is From Hell by Alan Moore. I am currently reading this. I've got a little bit left to go, so I'm kind of cheating here, but this is Jack the Ripper according to Alan Moore. I'm really digging it so far, but I always really enjoy Alan Moore's work. His take on Jack the Ripper is pretty intense. Alan Moore has created a really dark Victorian world. If you're into serial killers, I definitely recommend that you pick this one up, and it's huge too. It's very big. I got this out of the library though. And then to finish this off, if you're going to pick up a classic this Halloween and you can't decide between Frankenstein or Dracula, I would say definitely go with Dracula, because Frankenstein actually left me really fucking depressed after I read it, because it's more of a study on kind of humanity. It's more, you get a sense of him being brought into this world and he doesn't understand why people reject him, and this makes him very angry and he starts taking it out on people. Versus Dracula, which has a lot of suspenseful, tense scenes. There's a lot more horror elements in this. Both are completely different in their own ways, and you shouldn't really compare the both. But if you're gonna pick one over the other, I'd say go for Dracula versus Frankenstein this Halloween. So that has been my recommendation video for this October. I hope you find it helpful. Also, if you have any recommendations, because I don't even know what I'm gonna read the week of Halloween yet, if you have any recommendations yourself or for others, leave your recommendation below. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.